What does it take to create a vibrant, thriving life? First, the sad news is that Thoreau was right. Most people are leading quiet lives of desperation, lacking in meaning, fulfillment, and vitality. But we choose more. We choose to create extraordinary lives. And the Art of Vibrant Living show entertains you with inspiration, empowerment, and education to create your life into a masterpiece. It's time. Let's vibe up. Aloha, y'all. Welcome to the show. I am Daniel Aaron, your host. This is the Art of Vibrant Living show. And as the title might indicate, it's about empowering, inspiring, and entertaining you to make your life into a masterpiece of vibrancy. So, a couple of thoughts before I tell you about the show today. It's going to be an amazing one. I'm so excited. One is, please get even more value out of the show by taking something that Derek brings to you and saying, ooh, that's not just a good idea. That's something I'm going to put into place in my life. I'm going to act on it. And two, if you would like to have a conversation with me so I can help you to have more freedom, love, and power in your life, please reach out. You can send me an email, daniel@danielaaron.com. I would love to have a conversation with you. And with all that said, I am delighted. This conversation has been coming for some time. Derek Sivers is a radical, cool, interesting dude who's actually, I don't even know if he knows this, played a part in me helping transition my life from being a yoga teacher into being an author, coach, and transformational entertainer. Now, here's what Derek says about who he is. I've been a musician, circus performer, entrepreneur, and speaker. I'm a slow thinker, explorer, xenophile, and I love a different point of view. California native, I now live in New Zealand, and let's see, here we go. I am delighted that you are with us today. Derek, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Daniel. I love the vibe up in your intro.
Vibe up. That's, it's a simple way of saying it, but that's the way I see it. So cool. Well, I'm again excited that you're here. And just in case there are some folks that don't know who you are and how you got to this point, what would you love to share about that?
Sure. A little context. Grew up in Chicago. From the age of 14, I knew I wanted to be a successful musician. And so I was monomaniacally laser focused on that and only that from the age of 14 to 29. I went to music school, Berklee College of Music in Boston, moved to New York City. I was doing the whole thing as a full-time professional musician. Bought a house with the money I made touring, and I was completely focused on that one thing. And then, at the age of 29, I was selling my CD online, but all of my friends in the music industry in New York City said, oh, dude, can you sell my CD too? And so I accidentally started a business at the age of 29 called CD Baby that was a music distribution company. So then for 10 years, from age, 28 to 38, I did only that one thing. I was completely focused on just running this company called CD Baby. I had 85 employees. It was the largest seller of independent music on the web. Did it for 10 years, and then I just felt done. So I sold the company, walked away, and that's when things got interesting. Because I had been very head down for 25 years, from the age of 14 until 39, just doing music and then just doing this music store. And it wasn't until the age of 39 when I lifted my head up and started reading books and looking around and looking what else there was in life. And now I'm 54 and I guess still in that zone.
That's cool. And I recognize that in that you are something of an unusual musician in that you made enough money to buy a house, right? And
I was
Man, we
very
could
focused.
very focused.
It,
Yeah.
it wasn't just a casual thing. No, I was really intense that this is all I want in life is only to be a professional musician. And I think when you're that focused on anything, whether it's losing weight or making money or whatever it may be, if you're really that focused, you'll make it happen.
Yeah, I'm with you. And a lot of folks would say obsession is the key ingredient, right, in breaking through and creating success. And it sounds like, very focused, obsessed could be similar.
Yeah. Sometimes it can just be a matter of top priority. So years later, actually just a few years ago, I lost weight for the first time in my life. And somebody noticed. I guess you could tell in my public appearance that I lost weight. And somebody said, "Whoa, how'd you do it?" I went, "Well, we all know how. Everybody knows how. There's no shortage of how. I just finally got to the point in my life where it became my top priority. And that's that."
Awesome. It's tempting to talk about CD Baby because that was such a cool and innovative creation that you had. One thing I will say about it, and I say tempting because I think there are more current things that might be even more interesting to speak about. One of the things that I love about with your CD Baby story is to me, it really speaks to what I think of as pure entrepreneurship, in that you saw, well, maybe you didn't even see it originally. Your friends said, hey, I got this problem. Would you help? You saw an opportunity to help people to, quote, fix a problem. And that's, I think that's a lot of what drove you in it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think of business as a bandage. Business is a bandage to heal a problem. And that's why it exists. Business doesn't exist to make money for the founder. A business is there to solve a problem. And that's why I don't really understand when somebody says, "I want to start a business." I say, "Oh, okay, what do you want to start?" And they go, "I don't know." I'm like, well, that's like saying, "I want to wear a bandage." "Where's your wound?" "I don't know. I just want to wear a bandage."
Yeah. Well, so then that brings up an interesting track for me, in that CD Baby was a great business on the financial level, right? It went really well, especially when we think about the numbers back I was in the 90s, right? So it seems kind of obvious, though. I'd still love you to say, how did you do it for, quote, the right reasons and create such a successful financial business?
Luck. Really, I was in the right place at the right time. There was literally nobody else on the internet selling music for independent musicians, which is hard to believe now. There's, thousands of places. If you're a musician and you want to sell your music, there are thousands of places and people that'll be happy to help you do it. But in 1997, there was none, literally none. There wasn't even PayPal. Amazon was just a bookstore. There were no online record stores that dealt with independent musicians. There was just a guy named Derek in New York, and that was it. So when people started coming my way and I could tell that I had accidentally started a business, I didn't want this thing to take over my life. I was dead set on being a professional musician still. I didn't want this little side project to take over. So I decided to make it like a musician's dream come true. Like, in a perfect world, my distributor would pay me every week. That was unheard of at the time. People would pay you like a year later, if ever. Okay, in a perfect world, there would be no paid placement, meaning nobody can buy up the space on the front page, because that's not fair to those that can't afford it. Again, unheard of. Every place, of course, has the paid placement. That's how they make their money. Number 3, you'd never kick me out for not selling enough. Again, the way the distributors worked at the time is you'd have a short window to sell, and if you didn't sell really well, they'd kick you out of the system. And then lastly, I wanted to know the full name and address of everybody that bought my music. And again, Amazon would never give you that. Amazon doesn't tell you who's bought your stuff. They just say, all right, a bunch of people bought your stuff. Those are our customers. And from my opinion, it's like, no. They bought my stuff. They're my customers. They just used you to get at me. So yeah, with those 4 missions, well, sorry, four, what do we call them? Tenets?
Values,
Values? Yeah.
desires.
I I decided to make this little thing I had started into like a musician's dream come true. And I was just in the right place at the right time. It went really well.
Yeah, cool. Well, and there is, and I'm glad you bring that up because it's a conversation I have a lot with entrepreneurs or friends or colleagues. Like, hard work, we know, isn't enough, right? Focus or obsession or priority, that's important, but there are other factors out there, right?
Yeah.
And luck is one of them for sure.
Yeah. And also, thinking of a business like a bandage, you're supposed to be there to solve a problem that people actually have. If you're trying to solve a problem people don't actually have, if you were trying to be a I don't know, beeper salesman right now, it's like, well, people don't use pagers and beepers anymore. I think there might be 12 people on Earth that still use them. No matter how hard you worked, that's not something people are wanting right now. Yeah. You got to be making something that people are actually asking you for.
For sure, I'm with you. So that brings up an interesting question for me, which is my sense, and this is actually true for me in the past, and also I see it with a lot of other people. They want to create a business because they have something in them or feel like they do that they want to give to the world, right? And it's more like what's in me that I want to give, not necessarily,
Yeah.
well, what does the world need or what do they want? What are you thinking on that?
Yeah. Well put. That was the big difference that I felt in my life when switching from me to you. And what I mean is that the 15 years I spent as a musician, yes, it went pretty well with tons and tons and tons of extremely hard work. I was able to do okay, to get enough money to buy a house. But it was always an uphill battle. It's like, Daniel, it felt like every door was locked. Everything I tried was a struggle. Everything was uphill because it was all me. It was me putting my songs out into the world and look at me and listen to me. And as soon as I flipped that and I did this thing that was for others, I was completely just a public servant, I am in service of those who need my service. Boom, everything was just felt like running downhill. All of the doors that were locked became unlocked. Everybody just made everything easy for me because I was just serving others. It was a huge night and day difference.
That's awesome, and I can relate. And how did you do that? Or what did you do or not do that created that? What instigated that switch from me to you?
Oh, well, that's just, the story I just told. That was me selling my music on my band's website, and then some of my musician friends saying, yo, dude, can you sell my CD too? And so that's what I mean. It's just suddenly I went, oh, okay, sure, I can do that for you. And then calls from strangers. Hey, man, my friend Dave said you could sell my CD. All right, no problem. Hey, my friend Marcia said that you're selling music now. I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll hook you up. So suddenly I just became in service to the world.
Okay, cool. I'm with you. And it makes sense. And if it's all right, I'm going to persist a little bit because I suspect there's another piece there, because some people say, oh, okay, here's a way I can help people, or here's a business. All right, I'll start doing this. And it's still, even though they're helping people, it's a lot about how can I crank up my revenue here? How can I make this work for me in some way? Right. And so it wasn't just, I don't know. It seems to me there wasn't just them saying, hey, can you help me with my music? There was something more in you. Was there a turning point or something that happened in you that made that shift?
The word enough comes up a lot to me, because I was only for the first few weeks, I was doing this as a free favor. Like I was spending hours and hours and hours setting up websites for musicians to help them sell their music. And I was just doing it for free because they were friends. I did it for my friend Marco, then I did it for my friend Rachel, then I did it for Rachel's friend Dave. And I was doing it for free, and I enjoyed it. I was being useful. And then when I decided that I'd accidentally started a business, I decided to charge $35 per album to set up, which paid for about half an hour of my time. And so it was profitable enough. Like, just charging $35 to help people sell their music, that started making me as much money as doing some gigs would, but I didn't need to get in the car and drive 6 hours and set up a drum set and a whole band and do a show and pack up and drive 6 hours back. I could just sit at home on my computer and set up websites for people. Oh my God, this is great. So much easier. And so much more intellectually interesting. At that point, I had been touring for 15 years. And to suddenly be learning HTML and databases and to have people thanking... Okay, actually, here's a big one. People were thanking me every day. To go from this uphill battle of being in the music industry to having people every day going, oh my God, thank you. Thank you for setting up my music for sale. This is amazing. Thank you for doing this. That's an amazing feeling. And so was I trying to squeeze every last dollar out of people? Of course not. It was enough. Like $35 per album to set up in my store, that was enough. So squeezing every last dollar or focusing on the profit was not the reason I was doing this at all. And in fact, doing that would have wrecked what made it good. And that's a shame that we see in some businesses, is that somebody launches with a pretty cool service or product and maybe you start using it and then they try to like maximize their profit and you go, now it sucks. You just wrecked what was good about it by trying to maximize your profit. So I wish more businesses would remember the feeling of enough.
Yeah, I agree completely. Okay, cool. Well, so that's a great segue for me, because I would love to speak about your new book, almost released book, and maybe a doorway into that connects these is I've also appreciated the way you have approached publishing, right? You have, I think, 5 or 6 books out now, and you've done it a different way. You mentioned Amazon earlier and, the channel and all that. So would you say a bit about how you created the publishing and what inspired you to do that?
Sure. I never intended to write a book. I never had any interest in writing books. I was happy to just write on my blog. But then Seth Godin called me. Literally, my phone just rang from a number I didn't recognize. I said, hello? He said, Derek, it's Seth Godin. I went, oh my gosh, wow, hi, Seth. And he said, I'm starting a publishing company, and I want you to be my first author. What could you say to that? But okay. So he said, all right, about 11,000 words. It's like more of a manifesto. Let's make it short and punchy. All right. He said, could you do that for me? I said, yeah. So I wrote my first book in 11 days. And Seth published it. It was called Anything You Want. It was my story of the stuff we're talking about here, how I started and grew and sold my company. And yeah, I just did it in 11 days and thought nothing of it. He put it out. It sold well. After 5 years of running his own little publishing company, he sold it to Amazon. Sorry. No, scratch that. He sold it to Penguin. So then my book was re-released on Penguin 4 years later. And so I had what a lot of authors would consider to be the dream. I was on Penguin. It was in bookstores. And I got no deep joy out of it. Like, I would get checks for a few $1,000s, or I guess, ACH wire transfers into my bank account. But I didn't know the names, and I wasn't speaking directly with the people that were buying it. So it was not as rewarding. And yeah, Penguin was putting it into bookstores, but come on, 99% of sales happen online anyway. And so after a while, like when it came time to do the next book a few years later, my publisher at Penguin said, hey, we want whatever you've got. We'd love to publish your next book. And I said, thank you, I appreciate it. And I thought about it and I said, I'm just going to self-publish. It just makes more sense for me to sell directly to my fans, to create my own little store and do it the way I want to. So it was so much more rewarding. So once I decided to self-publish, then it's like, all right, well, in a perfect world, how would this go? And I thought of things like, I never thought it's fair that if I buy the Kindle version of a book, and then later I want to buy the paper version, I've got to pay like the $19 all over again. That doesn't really seem fair. Like, I've already bought the contents of the book. I just want the paper. Why do I have to pay for the contents all over again? And then what if I also want the audiobook? Well, now I've got to pay Audible all over again. I've got to buy the whole book 3 times. I spent like $50 to buy the book 3 times. It seems to me that I really should just be able to buy the book once and just choose whatever format I want at any time. Maybe I bought the book 6 years ago and now I feel like listening to the audiobook. I should be able to. So I made it so you can do that. So whenever you buy my books, you just get them in all formats, ebook, audiobook, paper book. I even made a video book once. You just get it included for free. It's part of just buying the book means you're buying the contents. You get all delivery formats are kind of moot. It's just the main point is getting the thoughts from here to there. So why charge for the delivery formats? So things like that. And then, quantity discounts or just keeping it all on my own website. Financially, it also made a huge difference because, of course, if you sell a book on a major publisher like Penguin, you'll get maybe $2 or $3 per book. But when people buy from me, I get the whole $15. And I set up my business in a way anyway where I don't need the money. So when you buy from me, that basically the entire $15 goes to charity after I just pay some basic expenses like the printing of the paper books. But my company's owned by a foundation, so that money never touches my hands anyway. It just all goes to charity.
That's beautiful. Well, I love that. And part of what I see in that, I love the question, well, in a perfect world, right, how would this go? And then also placing your own experience as a consumer, saying, well, what feels good to me? What doesn't feel good to me, right? And then overlaying that into, okay, well, what do I want to provide for others, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You could think of it as strategic, like as a business strategy, do what's best for your customers. But I don't even think about it like that. I think that money is secondary. To me, money is like the odometer on your car. The point of having a car is not to make the odometer go up. That's just a side effect of you using your car. If people were really focused on the odometer and pretty soon they're building machines to lift the car off the ground and spin the wheels overnight while they sleep so they can make the odometer go up, you'd say that they'd lost the point in life. And I feel that about people that are focused on money beyond their basic needs. They're like spinning their wheels to make the odometer go up. It seems like they've lost the point. So to me, if I'm going to do something, I want to make sure that it's for a good reason, not just for the money. The money's never the point. So, if I'm going to publish books, I think about it entirely from the point of view of the people that I'm making the books for, and how can I make this the best experience for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and one piece I bring to that is when it came, I have one book published, and when I went to create the audio version, then came the question, well, should I read it or have someone else read it? And it was immediate for me, like, well, I like it much better when the author reads. So of course that's what I'm going to do. Right? And super glad that I did it that way.
Isn't it a drag when you get an audiobook and it's read a little too professionally by a real professional speaker? It's hard. It sounds so insincere. It's so hard to get past a professional voice and listen to the content underneath.
Yeah, exactly. And even more hilarious is when it's like an American author and then read by a British accent. Like,
yes.
How does that come to be? Okay. Well, so making it useful, that's a good segue into your new book, Useful, Not True. And I don't know, it feels like, as I'm saying that, it feels like it's a little bit of a shift in the direction of some of the work that you've created. I don't know if it occurs to you that way. Let's just start with this, though. What prompted that? Why did you want to bring that book out?
Sure, I'll answer, but I'm curious what you meant by the shift. So I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours.
I will.
All right. So this is my fifth book. So there was that first one about how I started and grew my company. Then there was a book for musicians called Your Music and People, about how to market your music. It's actually a book about marketing, but it's just using musicians as the example. So if you're really into marketing and if you want to read metaphorically, you might like Your Music and People. Then I did Hell Yeah or No, which was about what's worth doing, making decisions. And then I did this one that might go down as my favorite masterpiece in my life. I'm so happy with it. It's a weird book called How to Live that is 27 conflicting answers to that question on how to live and one weird conclusion. So it's 27 little chapters, each thinking that it has the answer on how to live, but each chapter disagrees with all the other chapters. And it's a head-spinning read, and I love it. And underneath all of that, in all of my books, or just my writing in general, I would share perspectives that I had deliberately adopted to help correct my thinking. Like, say, I'll just pick the obvious example. If you're always late for things, if you're notoriously late, even if you try to be on time, you end up late. Well, then to correct your habit, you deliberately kind of tell yourself that you need to leave earlier than it seems like you need to leave. You think you need to leave 10 minutes early? No, you need to leave 30 minutes early. And if you tell yourself you need to leave 30 minutes early, well, then you actually maybe leave 15 minutes early and that gets you there on time, right? We all do this. We all know that we compensate for our faults by thinking the other way. So there are some beliefs that I've chosen because they compensate for my biases in life. And so I would share a thought, like, say, for example, I choose to believe that I'm below average in everything I do. And somebody would say, but that's not true. And I'd say, I never said it was true. Nobody's talking about true here. It's a useful belief for me. I choose my beliefs because they're useful, not because they're true. What the hell is true anyway? According to who? True for everyone, everywhere, always? Or just true for you? Like, what does that mean? So I guess I had talked about this kind of between the lines for years. And I finally thought, this is kind of an interesting subject. I should write a book about it. So I spent the last 2 years full-time basically working on this new book called Useful Not True that dives into that subject.
Beautiful. Okay, cool. So before I tell you mine, you reminded me, Hell Yeah or No, right? That has become a phrase in our culture now, right? And as far as I know, you originated that maybe with an article or a blog post or something. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think in 2009, I published an article called Hell Yeah or No that people seemed to like, and so it spread from there.
Yeah, which is awesome, right? You created something that has spread, and probably 90% of people that speak that, because I hear people speak that about how they make their decisions and whether they're going to do this or that, is they don't know that that's where it comes from.
That's great. I'm thoroughly happy with that. I don't need any more credit than I've already got.
Well, and similarly, I'm curious your experience with the YouTube video you made about how to create a movement, right? Is that, am I rephrasing it correctly?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And that has gotten a lot of traction, and a lot of people refer to that. What's that like for you?
I don't know if I'm supposed to be faux humble right now.
No,
but the truth is,
no faux.
I love it. I love seeing that things I've done have spread and had an impact. It is such a deep joy. I guess, the Hell Yeah or No article, I guess CD Baby itself, I made this thing that grew way beyond me. The Hell Yeah or No article, the dancing guy first follower leadership video, the Now page, and a lot of personal websites now have a page called /now where they talk about what they're doing now. I invented that. Sounds weird to say that, but I didn't mean to start a thing. I just did a thing, and then other people liked it and started doing it. And then I guess maybe just articles I've written in general when people tell me that they've found that. In the case of the dancing guy, the first follower, I saw a YouTube video bouncing around the web, and about the guy dancing alone at a festival, and suddenly everybody joins in. And I watched it the first time, and I went, "Huh, that was funny." And then I thought, "Wow, that's really a good metaphor for leadership. Like that's how it really goes, isn't it? Somebody just starts doing something, and other people join in." And so I wrote a little article in 2009 about how this video is a good metaphor for leadership. And then the TED conference asked me to do it on stage. So I did it on stage at the big main stage annual TED in California. And it was overwhelming and amazing. They're like my heroes were in the audience. I mean, there's the guys that started Google. There's Bill Gates. There's Tony Robbins. And there's Al Gore. And these people are just sitting in the audience listening to me give this talk. And as soon as I was done, people tweeted the hell out of it and shared it everywhere. And it has been spreading ever since. But at this point now, it feels maybe like somebody who wrote a hit song in the 90s and has like moved on with their life, and it was 25 years ago. And when I see that somebody's sharing the first follower leadership lessons from a dancing guy, I'm like, oh, sweet. It's really nice to see. I did that a long time ago. But yeah, I'll admit, it's a deep source of joy. It makes me so happy to see that things I've made, often in just a few minutes, are spreading out to the world still.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, and my perspective on that is there's no need to admit. I say, shout it from the rooftops. Like it's great to be fulfilled by that. That's my perspective on it.
Cool.
And so, okay, that brings me to a question that will also lead to my responding to what you asked me a moment ago, which is, one theme I have seen in your life and your work is innovation, right? Like, oh, I see a different way. I see a new way, something, hey, this could be done differently. Better maybe. And with that, or underneath that, is a courage, a willingness to put yourself forward, right? Speaking of leadership, right? There's a leadership axiom that says, well, those that go first end up with arrows in their back, right? And it's, sometimes a little scary to go against the grain or the mainstream. So one, would you say that theme is true for you in terms of innovation? And two, how did you cultivate that courage? Where did that come from?
It's not courage, and there are no arrows in the back. I get the metaphor, and I think I've probably said it myself too, but not for me. The things I'm doing, I just do them for myself. I'm not trying to make a thing, and if nobody else ever did it or ever followed, that would be fine. You know what I mean? Like the fact that I just built my own little bookstore on my website to sell my books. Right now, there aren't that many authors doing that. If in the future it becomes a thing and lots of authors do that and somebody says like, hey, Derek Sivers started this thing, I'd say, well, I mean, I did it first, but I wouldn't say that I was trying to start a thing. It's not like, oh, I'm going to brave out and attempt to do this thing that nobody else is doing. I just was doing a thing kind of irregardless of others. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was doing it just for me and my existing audience, and that's it. If other people pick up on it, it won't be because I tried to make them do so. And I think that's maybe the arrows in the backs come from that idea of somebody doing something too risky, too soon, and they're doing it for public approval. They want the world to buy their new innovative idea, flying vacuum cleaners or whatever. and the world wasn't ready for flying vacuum cleaners, and they lost their investors' money, and nobody wanted to buy their flying vacuum cleaners. And so, they look at the arrows in their back for being too soon. 100 years from now, when flying vacuum cleaners are a thing, we'll all look to that guy and went, oh, he was too soon. He got the arrows in his back. But I can't relate. I'm not doing anything for that reason.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's great. I appreciate what you shared with that. And I'll go another level deeper with it, which is, here's an example. When I published my first book, one of the things I was indicating in there is just questions about language and the way we use language. And you're probably aware that there is one way of saying it is a distinction between the word and the word but, right? And so you know what I'm talking about. I don't need to go into detail on that. And to me, that's a worthy distinction. It's been something that I've been semi-consciously deprogramming for like decades now, my conditioning to say but, when actually and would work better, right? It's both and, right? And I know you have some experience with comedy improv, right? So, and when I was in the process of editing, I got a lot of pushback from my editor saying that's incorrect, right? For me to use and when it should be, in his opinion, from the way the language is understood up till this point, to use but. And it was really a fascinating dilemma for me through the process of like, okay, is this going to be too far for people? Is it going to sound too weird? And ultimately, I went with mostly ands in that because I made a point of it in the book, right? And so, for me, that was like, one, this is being true to myself. If I keep using buts, I'm going to feel hypocritical. And two, I want to, help people understand this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love it. Editors will try to make your writing proper. But sometimes there are things that we're doing for more artistic reasons than just being proper. So I've had those struggles with editors too. I guess you could say in general. I mean, there are norms and there are reasons to follow norms. And sometimes it helps when people point out norms. I'm at a formal dinner and I didn't know I'm supposed to switch hands with my silverware or something. Thank you for pointing that out. And there are other times when you just make a creative choice. You say, no, I'm choosing to do it this way, even though I know it might ruffle some feathers. Some people won't like it, but it's important to me to do it this way.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, well, so ruffle some feathers. I know Useful Not True, your latest book, is not fully released yet, though some lucky people like myself have had access to it. Have you had any feathers ruffled from it?
No, surprisingly. I talked about religion in there, and that was a stretch for me. I only learned about religion in the last few years. I wasn't brought up with any. So I learned a lot in the last 2 years in preparation for writing this book. I went and did a deep dive on a bunch of subjects around theology, and it was really interesting. So I felt out of my league writing a chapter or two about religion, but shouldn't we all often feel out of our league? Isn't that a good thing? It's pushing beyond our comfort zone. So, the only feathers I was worried about ruffling were the chapters about religion, but luckily I think I laid up my case strong enough so that by the time the religion chapter comes along, people aren't offended.
I'm with you.
What did you think about it?
The religion part?
Yeah.
I mean, it's right. It's very much in alignment with my own philosophy. So I didn't feel any ruffled feathers. Yet I do suspect that a lot of people believe in truth with a capital T. And, so I think there are a lot of the chapters in there that I hope will shake people up. Right. I don't know. One of my teachers used to say, whenever we say, I like you, really what we're saying is, my neurosis is like your neurosis, right? Or another way of saying it is, my genius is like your genius, or my values are like your values. So I'm a bad test case in terms of, being offended or having feathers ruffled.
Cool. Thank you.
So actually, let me rewind a moment and then bring this into another question. You said in your bio, slow thinker, and you talked about some of the origins of this book being around correcting our biases, right, in some way. And so as I think of slow thinker and correcting our biases, I think of Daniel Kahneman, right, and his work. Was that an influence for you in
Oh, yeah.
creating this?
Yeah. Cognitive behavioral therapy mixed with Daniel Kahneman's System 1 versus System 2 thinking have this thing in common, which is that it can be much wiser to pause for a second and think for a second. Think it through for a second before responding to anything. So cognitive behavioral therapy often focuses on that gap between something happened, you've got your immediate impulsive response, but hold on, think about it for a second. Is that true? Is that who I want to be? How could I think about this? It can only take a few seconds or just a minute to put a gap between the stimulus and the response. So yeah, a lot of what I'm talking about in Useful Not True is actually cognitive behavioral therapy, but I didn't learn that term until just a few years ago. And it's how I've been living my life the whole time. Maybe thanks to Tony Robbins. When I was a teenager, I read Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within, and he talks a lot about reframing, choosing your response. And I think I really took that to heart, and I've been living that way for 30 years. And, but I try to, whenever I write, I try to not name isms and formal philosophies. I try to just say what you're saying without needing to refer it back to some ism that you're quoting. So I don't actually say cognitive behavioral therapy anywhere in the book, but it's a lot of that.
Yeah, that makes good sense, perfect sense. So will you take us a little bit into some of the pieces of the book? Well, let me ask it this way. Do you have, this is silly, but do you have a favorite component or story or chapter from it?
Sure. Yeah. Well, okay. Why not? I'll do it. A group of adventurers need to cross a narrow bridge over a deep canyon, but a fearsome guard appears in front of the bridge, like Aladdin's genie, the genie from Aladdin's lamp, and blocks the entrance to the bridge and says, "No one can pass until you tell me what's true." And then he snaps their fingers, and their vision is replaced with the scene of a king being offered a bowl of soup. He takes a sip and he pushes it away, saying, "It's too salty." And their vision is restored. And one adventurer says, "The king thinks the soup is too salty?" The guard says, "No." "The king doesn't like the soup?" "No." And he said, "The king said the words, 'It's too salty'?" "True." And that one person is allowed to cross the bridge. And then again, he booms, "No one can cross until you tell me what's true." He snaps his finger, and now their vision is replaced with the scene of a woman trapped inside a box. She's pushing and pounding, and nothing's working. She can't get out. Boom. Their vision is restored. And one of the adventurers says, "The woman's trapped in the box?" "No." "She's pushing and she's trying everything and can't get out?" "No." And then one adventurer says, "She's pushing and pounding the box?" "True." And that adventurer is allowed to cross the bridge. Then one more time he says, "No one can cross until..." But the youngest girl in the group got the message. She walked straight up to the fearsome guard and she said, "I'm going to cross the bridge now." And she squeezed between his legs and crossed the bridge. So all of the other adventurers did the same, and the guard smiled with pride.
I love it. And I love it because just before I semi-restrained myself when I asked you, do you have a favorite? What would you like to talk about? Because the first thing that was on my mind right then was that particular story, Bridge Guard.
Oh, really? Oh, sweet.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
So we're in sync on that.
I
And
liked it a lot.
part of why I love it is because, well, personally, I had to read it a second time. Like I read it and I was like, huh, wait a minute. It took me a minute to get it, right? And of course, it's always better when we get it, right? When it's not immediately obvious, when we work a little bit to understand something.
Yeah.
And it points to such an not obvious truth, which is so much of what people say is just interpretation.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's essentially what half the book is about, is that just because somebody said something, just because the king said it's too salty, doesn't mean the king necessarily thinks it's too salty. He could be hiding the fact that he's too tired and wants to go to sleep but doesn't want to admit it. He could be testing the chef to see if the chef will push back and say, no, Your Highness, it is perfect. All we really know is the king said it's too salty. We can't imply anything else from that. And same thing with the woman that seems to be trapped in a box, pushing and pounding and can't get out. All we really know is she's pushing and pounding. There could be a key right there and a button that she's forgot to push that could unlock everything. And too often, all of us in day-to-day life have these limiting beliefs where we take one glance at something and it looks like we're trapped, and so we declare that we are trapped. But it becomes a limiting belief that's not necessarily true. So the idea is in a little story is that the girl put those two examples together and got the hint that the guard was trying to tell them, you are not actually blocked. Even though I'm saying you can't cross until you tell me what's true, and even though I'm big and standing in front of the bridge, doesn't mean that you can't actually cross.
Yeah, I love it. And part of what I get from that is the implication that the world is malleable, right? That we are, if we choose to be, reality benders, right? We can create what we want, right? And I think that's a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow. Go ahead.
It's funny. I thought you meant it the opposite way. We are already reality benders when we see, for example, a situation that seems to be a dead end, and we just instantly declare it to be a dead end. There's no way out. There are no jobs. Nobody's hiring in this town. The economy's going to hell. This is bad. You can't do that. There's no way. They'd never hire somebody that looked like you. We are already bending reality for the negative when we assume these disempowering interpretations and declare them to be fact. So a lot of what the book is about, for more than half of it, for 3/5 of it, is pointing out again and again and again, that's not necessarily true. That's not necessarily true. Just because somebody said this doesn't mean it's true. Just because you seem to be trapped doesn't mean it's true. Just because you believe that you can't be president doesn't mean it's true, etc. I'm trying to remove people's limiting beliefs.
Hallelujah. Thank you. I love it. Right. You're doing a lot of my work for me with that.
Anytime, Daniel.
And I appreciate the bulk discounts because I can, make it easier to give it to all my clients. Well, so the two things that come to me from that are, one, I think for me, Tony Robbins was instrumental in that too. I remember the first time I saw him at an event, and he told the story of his first client being himself and all the limiting beliefs he had, right? I'm too young and blah, blah, blah. And what he created from that, phenomenal, right? And he's a great instigator of people being able to create. So the other piece that comes is a TV show I saw years ago called House MD. right? Based on Sherlock Holmes, and there's this great diagnostician with really bad bedside manner, terrible to be around, sarcastic and obnoxious, yet he's the best diagnostician in the world. And every time there is, okay, differential diagnosis, everybody, someone would say, well, they said this, and he said, people, they're all lying, right? That would be all, like going to what patients said. He said, you got to remember, they're all lying. And I remember when I first saw that, I was like, oh, that's kind of harsh and negative and obnoxious. But it got to the same point that you make in that story and make throughout the book in lots of ways. And it's not that they're necessarily meaning to lie, or not necessarily that that it's not true. It's just, well, yeah, maybe it's not the whole truth. I guess we could say it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the first page of the book, I say, look, the book is called Useful, Not True. So we need to narrow down that word true. So to be clear, when I say true, what I really mean is absolutely, objectively, empirically, necessarily true for everyone, everywhere, always. That's what I mean by true. The reason to have such a narrow definition is that whatever you consider to be true is closed. No questions, that's that. That's just true. I'm never going to question that because it's true. Everything else, if you say it's not necessarily true, as soon as you think not necessarily true, your brain instantly goes to, well, what else could be true then? What other perspectives could there be on this? So I just want to point out that except for some absolute physical realities that any creature or machine could observe and agree, everything else is just subjective. And so when people say things like, you can't do that, it's not true. It's just a perspective. And so kind of like, in your example, House MD, where you said they're lying, my version is it's not true. Because that's shorthand for, absolutely, necessarily, objectively, always true for everyone, always, everywhere. It helps to narrow it that tightly so that you can see that everything else is up for reframing.
Yeah, beautiful. And that's part of the beauty and power of Byron Katie's work, right?
Yes.
When she says, is it true? And everybody goes, well, yes, it's true. And they say, can you absolutely know that it's true?
Right.
Okay, maybe not. So, all right, time's flying. I got one more question for you from the book, though. If I remember right, there's a chapter called Perspectives, or maybe more than one, right? And part of what I recall from that is, everybody that's speaking, they're really just saying their perspective, right? And for a lot of us, that can be hard to be aware of, hard to remember, especially when it comes to authorities, right? Be those people in white coats or speaking legalese or, in some kind spiritual garb. So, well, I guess first, does that make sense? Am I understanding correctly? And second, well, let me ask that first.
Yeah. Interesting. Yes.
Okay. So what do you suggest, or what would you say to people that tend to abdicate their power to authorities, is the way it comes to me to say?
Well, since we're wrapping up, let's not forget that word useful. That just because I have a chapter that says no religious beliefs are true, because remember, that doesn't mean they're false, but by that definition of absolutely, objectively, for everyone, everywhere, always, in that definition, no religious beliefs are true, because every religious believer knows that there are other people that believe other things. So therefore, you can't say that your beliefs are absolutely true for everyone, everywhere, always, including creatures and machines, They are your beliefs that you are holding on to because they're working for you. They're useful to you. Believing this makes you happier, makes you a better person, Maybe it makes you more thoughtful, more generous, more connected to others. There's so many reasons to hold on to your beliefs because they're useful to you. And that's the only argument you need. You don't need to argue that they're true. You don't need to fight with non-believers to argue that you're right, they're wrong, or vice versa. They don't need to argue the opposite. All you need to understand is that your beliefs are useful to you. Or let's just say, you only need to judge your beliefs by whether or not they are useful to you. If it makes you a better person, if it makes you take better actions, that's all that really matters.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you. All right. Well, so as we are wrapping up, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you? And let me say this actually, because one of the things that amazed me about you when we first met many years ago is you said, well, and I think it's on your Now page now, I respond to all emails, right? And most people don't in the world, let alone people who are authors and famous people. So, well, actually, let me ask you this then: why do you do that?
I live on an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, like yourself. I'm in New Zealand, aka Hawaii South, and I love hearing from people around the world. It's my favorite hour. One of my favorite hours of the day is the hour I spend with my inbox each day. I get these emails from people in Tunisia, a musician in Finland, an author in Brazil. It's so cool to hear from people around the world. I love it. It's one of my greatest joys. And then later when I travel, I end up meeting up with these people in person. So a week from today, I'm heading off to South America for the first time in my life, where I'm going to Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, Uruguay, and Chile. And I'm going to be meeting with, I think, 70 people there, just one-on-one, 70 one-on-one kind of meetups with people that have been emailing me for years, or I've been emailing with for years. And that's why we're meeting, is because 15 years ago, they reached out to say hello. And now here we are 15 years later, going to meet up in Mexico City or whatever. So I just love connecting with people. It's so rewarding. So yes, anybody listening to this, go to my website, go to sive.rs and introduce yourself and say hello.
Perfect. I will. I'll pop that up on the thing. And so, sive.rs for those listening in. Yeah. Where does that come from? That's an unusual URL.
Oh, well, I just realized I used to have, for years, I still have Sivers. Well, I have Sivers.com, Sivers.net, Sivers.org. I bought all these way back in the 90s when I first got online. I was like, oh, look, they're available, my name. So I registered them all. And I'm a ridiculous minimalist. I only have one pair of pants. I'm one of those weird guys. Don't hold it against me. But at a certain point a few years ago, I looked at my URL, Sivers.org. Everything was Sivers.org/this, Sivers.org/that. And I went, .org? That's not really necessary, is it? I'm not an organization, am I? I'm just me. And so I saw that I could get the domain name sive.rs. And I went, yeah, that's just me. No .com, no .net, no .org, just me. So yeah, RS stands for Republic of Serbia, but they let anybody register it.
Wow. Okay. Good. I learned a lot of new things, and that's one of them.
I wonder what somebody is EL. What would that be? No, I don't know if .el. But a lot of us have names. Like if you would be like DANI.el. I'm not sure if that one's available. But like Naval Ravikant, I know has like NAV. .al, because .al maybe Algeria or something like that. It's like sometimes you can use the country code dots to use as the last couple letters of your name. But yeah, just the nerdy fascination of a devout minimalist that I'm always looking to scrape away every unnecessary line in my books. My books are very short. I get rid of every sentence that doesn't absolutely need to be there. And then I just started I do the same with my programming code. I do my own programming. And when I looked at my domain name, I was like, yeah, I think I can get rid of a few letters here.
That's beautiful. I love it. Essentializing, distilling.
Essentializing. Yes, good word.
Yeah. Derek, thank you so much. Not just for, in spending this time with us. I really appreciate that. Also for all that you've done and all that you've done to create yourself into who you are and the work you've done from your heart into the world. It's you've created a lot of positive impact for so many people. And I'm grateful
Thanks.
that you did spend this time with us.
Well, you too. I mean, you and I have been emailing for years, and I really love and admire what you're doing. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, pleasure. Awesome. Thank you. All right. And for y'all in the audience, by the way, somebody criticized me the other day for using the word y'all. Can't please everybody. I like the word. English doesn't have a second person plural. What are you going to do? Better than what are you's going to do? In any case, y'all who tuned in, thank you so much for not just being interested in creating a vibrant, thriving life. You're doing something about it. Again, please put some of this into action. Try it out in your life today. And please come back again soon. Thanks, y'all. I love you. See ya. Mahalo for tuning in to the Art of Vibrant Living show, y'all. I'm Daniel Aaron, and may you live with great vibrancy.